My headphones fell out right before going live. And we're live! Friends from around the world, welcome to The Great Debate. Not a debate where both sides work to defeat one another, rather where both sides come together to find common ground on the most important issues of our time. Today, a special session. You may have heard of the two-state solution. They talk about it all the time. You may have heard others claim that a one-state solution is the best solution. But did you know that there's other solutions being worked on? And in particular, there's one type of solution that's been gaining in popularity in recent years. And we're very happy to highlight this solution in today's episode. We are here to discuss a federation. What is a federation? Well, you will soon find out. Our two guests today, which I'll bring them on in a moment, are two experts when it comes to the federation solution. They've both devised their own federation solutions that are very similar, but with a fair amount of differences. Today, we're going to explore that and better understand the whole concept of a federation and if it's viable. What's for sure is that the status quo is unsustainable, and we all need to work towards a better future for all inhabitants of this land. That's what we're here to do. That's what the Great Debate is all about. Before I introduce my guests, just a quick little reminder. We're going to have an after party after this discussion in Discord. If you don't know what Discord is, just find a link in the comments, join, you'll see. It's very cool. The conversation continues. If you're new to this page, like, subscribe. And if you really like what we do, we have a Patreon where you can support us for as little as $1 a month. That helps us do this awesome content. Any amount is greatly appreciative. You can find also all these links in the description. Without further ado, a great pleasure to bring on my two guests. To my top left, Rafi Gassel, a father, Zionist, scientist, and peace activist. He lives in Jerusalem, where he works in biotechnology in the fields of diagnostics and genetic sequencing. He's an advocate for cooperative coexistence and equality in Israel-Palestine through the realization of mutual recognition of indigenous rights for the Jewish and Palestinian people. And to my top right, Emanuel Shahaf, born in Germany in 1954 and immigrated to Israel in 1972. He has studied Aeronautical Engineering at Technion, which is Israel's Institute of Technology. He has served as staff officer in the Israel Air Force, and he worked at the office of the Prime Minister until his retirement in 2003, and since that date, he has been a political activist. He is one of the original architects of the Federation solution, which actually Rafi, from what I know, helped with, but we'll hear more from them. So these are two experts in the field. Great to have you both here with us.
Great to be here.
So before we get started, before we work out our differences, I just want the audience to better understand who you both are and what your solutions are. So Emanuel, the floor is yours. Please explain a little bit about your federation solution.
Okay, so I came to the federation solution after being active in politics, especially in Israel's Labor Party, after I retired from the service in 2003, and in about 2014, it occurred to me that the two-state solution is dead. I wasn't the only one, but it's starting to grow, and a lot of people. I came across a fellow activist, Aryeh Hess, who was working on a federal solution, and since then, since 2014, we've both been working on that solution. Rafi kindly joined us for part of the way, and he's responsible for some of the fantastic graphics of the cantonal map, which you'll see later. Thank you. And so let me start talking about, first of all, the background. As I said, the two-state solution is pretty much dead. It wasn't such a good idea in the first place. Both sides don't really want a two-state solution. What I'm saying now is supported by major polls. The support for the two-state solution has been going down continuously. It's below 50% among the Palestinians. It's at the 50% mark in Israel. Both populations, two-thirds majority of both populations don't think a two-state solution is possible in the foreseeable future. And there's really nothing much else out there. We've been working on the federation, which is supposed to take care of many of the faults of the two-state solution. First of all, one of the big advantages of the two-state of the federation solution over the two-state solution is the economic aspect. People don't know this, but about 80% of the Palestinian economy is dependent on Israel's economy, and the two-state solution would pretty much ruin the Palestinian economy, no matter how you shape the border arrangement between Israel and Palestine. It would harm the local Palestinian economy, which actually works very nicely with Israel's economy. So an integration of the two economies is something that is called for. Incidentally, in our Declaration of Independence, the Declaration of Independence calls for economic integration of the land of Israel. And the UNGA Resolution 181 also calls for economic unity in the land of Israel. Political separation, but economic unity. So what are we looking at when we're talking about the federal solution? First of all, we are looking at one state between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean, not including the Gaza Strip. I'll explain to you later why the Gaza Strip is not included. What we are suggesting is to extend Israel's sovereignty over the area of Yehuda v'Shomron, the Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, giving citizenship to all Palestinians who are interested in obtaining it. Potentially, that would be approximately between 2 and 2.5 million. Nobody really knows, and of course, including also those in East Jerusalem. This would create a state in Israel, again, without the Gaza Strip, of 65% Jewish majority, 35% Palestinian minority. We would call for a governmental reform, major governmental reform, which would split the country into 30 federal units, if you want to call them. We call them cantons because we pretty much follow the Swiss model. 30 seems like a big number for a small country, for a small state, but actually, if you look at Switzerland, it's only about twice the size of Israel, which pretty much the same population. They also have 26 cantons. The number of cantons is not critical, so it's nothing particular to the number 30, except that the bigger the number, that the less critical each canton becomes. Okay, so if one of the cantons goes crazy, the whole thing won't fall apart. The ratio of the cantons will be there will be Jewish majority cantons and Palestinian majority cantons. The ratio of them will be according to the demographic ratio. So if we're talking about 2/3, 1/3, we're talking about 20 Jewish majority cantons and 10 Palestinian majority cantons. There would be a constitution which would regulate the interaction between the federal government in Jerusalem and the cantons. It would be a secular constitution, obviously, because we have several religions in the country, so we have to take religion out of the game, and we would start developing the local government in those 30 cantons, which would increase would make the economics a lot better than they are now, and spread the wealth. So this is the basic premise of the federation we're suggesting. The reason we don't include the Gaza Strip at this time, and we propose that the Gaza Strip should be a separate state, a Palestinian state, which would be given all the support necessary to maintain itself and to develop itself, and of course border arrangements and so on and so forth, is because politically I don't think it's feasible at this time for the Knesset to accept the 50-50 population ratio, which would be what would be created if we would include the Gaza Strip. So a 2/3, 1/3 population ratio, I think, would be feasible with all the advantages. And a federal arrangement is definitely feasible. As a matter of fact, maybe people have heard, but the Ministry of Interior in Israel has recently proposed a plan to split Israel into federal units, so to speak. The plan is probably not going to get a lot of political support at this time, but it has been tabled, and the Minister of Interior has actually said that he supports it. So we are actually going into that direction. The plan, as it is proposed by the Ministry of Interior, has not been mentioned in reference to the political solution of the conflict, but that's what we're working on, trying to get the word out. So those are the baselines, and I think I'll defer to Rafi and let him propose his solution, and then we discuss.
Great, thanks, Emanuel.
Show the map of the solution, or I can.
I'll let me just quickly share my screen to see what it looks like. Hold on. Okay, let me see. Can you see it? Can you see it?
No, I'm not seeing it.
Okay, hold it. No, I haven't touched the share. Oh, okay. Share.
Yep, here it is.
Hold it, but that's not the. Okay, can you see it?
Yep.
Okay, this is the cantonal arrangement as we propose it. As you can see, 30 cantons. Red is the Gaza Strip here. The green cantons are the Palestinian cantons. Jerusalem is in gold. The blue cantons are the Jewish majority cantons. Those violet cantons are the Druze cantons is one canton. There is some of the cantons don't have contiguity, which is not a really big issue. It's just a matter of convenience, and we can discuss it later. Okay, so that's the way it looks. And thank you again, Rafi, for your contribution to this map.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go back. Here we go.
Okay. So my name is Rafi. I live in Jerusalem. I've been here for maybe 14 years now, and I was involved in dialogue when I was in university in America between Jews and Palestinians, trying to figure out what to do. And when I came here, I realized, as someone living in Jerusalem, that there's not really a feasible way to do what you think is a two-state solution, because you can't really put a giant wall in the middle of the city of Jerusalem. You know, there's about 1 million people here. 2/3 of them are Jewish, and 1/3 of them are Palestinian, and we're not segregated now. So why propose a solution where, in order so that people in Tel Aviv don't have to see Palestinians as much, we'll have to, put a wall in the middle of Jerusalem, which would separate Jews from, the historic, center of our culture, the old city, and figuring out how to, create the security arrangement in Jerusalem, where basically it would turn Jerusalem into type of airport level security, where it would be really impractical and unnecessary, considering we're not segregated now. So at the bare minimum, you would need for any kind of solution, even let's call it a two-state solution, you'd have a state of Israel and a state of Palestine, and Jerusalem would be the territory and capital of both of those states. And because we can't segregate Jerusalem, you can't really separate the people at all. The people would have to be able to freely move between the Palestinian side and the Israeli side, because you're not going to agree to have a wall around Jerusalem and then a wall in the rest of the country, and we're going to be sort of trapped in a cage. And because and Jerusalem's going to be open, then it's going to be basically freedom of movement throughout the country. And there's no place in the world where two states share a capital of their country as their territory and capital that's not called a federation. I mean, that's the definition of what it is. So my original ideas, I think I may have called it a confederation. I was involved in the Israeli-Palestinian Confederation project. It was basically, you'd have a state of Israel, a state of Palestine, more or less the green line borders with minor alterations, and a shared city of Jerusalem and freedom of movement between the two states. That was sort of my original plan. I was friends with Kamal Nawash, who met Emanuel, and we were involved together in this thing called the Best Plans for Peace Project, and different people wrote different peace plans. And I started with the Confederation. Kamal called it a federation, but we basically had pretty much the same visions. And that was maybe, I don't know, 8 years ago. And a couple of years ago, I met Emanuel on Facebook, I think, and I found his version of the federation a little more practical in terms of the idea that when you have all of Israel and all of Palestine as two states in a federation, each side has way too much power. You know, like Emanuel was saying, you want to divide it up so if one side goes crazy, the whole thing doesn't fall apart. Well, if there's only two sides, one side going crazy is not that hard, you know. And the idea is when you talk about a two-state federation, the whole state of Israel is basically like the nation state of Israel now. The whole state of Palestine is like the envisioned nation state of Palestine, and they're trying to share a capital, and the federal government becomes very limited in terms of shared security and, you know, border arrangements and whatnot. It doesn't have the real power to enforce laws, and either side could leave pretty easily. It's not as stable as, like, you know, imagine the United States made up where all the blue states were one state and all the red states were one state. It would just be not fair. And, you know, all of Maryland and Virginia was the shared capital. It just wouldn't be a practical way to build a country. It's much better that states know that they're in America. They know they're states. You know, New York knows it's New York. New Jersey's New Jersey. Neither of them think they run the country. But where a federation of just Israel and Palestine is two states, they each think of themselves as the nation state of an entire people. So when I was attracted to Emanuel's plan that you would break things up into cantons, similar to how you do it in the United States or Switzerland, like you mentioned. And so Emanuel was mentioning he wanted to do a map, and I said, I've done a bunch of maps because I was doing the Best Plans for Peace project, and different people had all sorts of ideas. So I learned how to use Google Maps and make cool maps. So I said, hey, I'll help you out. So he gave me a list of all the major cities that were in each canton, and I, you know, used some artistic license and put together a map for those guys, and we debated where things were, and that was pretty cool. So one time, Kamal, my friend who I had written this federation plan, he came to Israel. He comes every year or so. Well, not this year because of Corona, but he wanted to do something together. So I said, hey, Emanuel, and he was thinking maybe let's go to the Knesset, let's maybe do an event. I said, hey, Emanuel, let's go to meet Yehuda Glick, because we had done like a bunch of events with Yehuda Glick, and in the Knesset, we'd gone to meet him twice, and one time he held like a big sort of conference for the Federation movement. And so I thought that would be cool to bring these guys together and talk about Kamal's idea for a federation and Emanuel's idea. And I saw like how Kamal was reacting. He said, listen, Emanuel, we would go along with this because we don't have a better choice. But if you really want like Palestinians to be gung-ho and be like all in favor of it, you're gonna have to like include Gaza, or at least invite them, because like to the Palestinians, they're not going to ditch Gaza like we wouldn't ditch Jews in Yemen. That's like, you know, one of their fingers, you know. So if Gaza chose not to join, okay, you know, they don't want to be part of it. That's a different story. But they'd have to at least be invited. You would need at least some kind of, you know, right of return, however symbolic, you know, like we had proposed in my plan for a similar number of Jews that make Aliyah every year. You can have a similar number of Palestinians, so you'd maintain parity, and of course to have some kind of parity similar to like my plan and Kamal's plan with the two-state federation, whereas you'd have a state of Israel, a state of Palestine, and then a mutual parliament that would be half Israeli, half Palestinian, half Jewish, and half Palestinian. So when I was listening to these two guys talk about it, I came up with this idea, like I really like the canton model. So what if you tried to do a canton model that was parity, that was 50-50? You know, sort of combining the two ideas. And I played around with it. I made a few maps, and I sort of put that in the back of my head for maybe 2 years or so. And then after I did a debate here on the Great Debate, I was talking to some Palestinians, and one of them said, hey, I really like your ideas. I had some ideas about a federation. Maybe we could talk about it. I'm like, sure, I have this whole idea for a federation. Let's start flushing it out. And so me and him sort of worked out, you know, we went through like 20 different versions of the map. And we eventually wrote a constitution for how we would envision this perfect, you know, parity federation. And I really wanted to do it with someone who was Palestinian, so it would really be fair in a sense to both sides, and it wouldn't be like my vision of what fairness is, because I'm biased because I'm Israeli, you know, and he would be biased because he's Palestinian. So if we both agree, it's already like getting that neutral effect. So maybe I could quickly share a screen just to like give you my how ours looks in a map. All right. All right, so this is the Federation movement. This is the map we did for Emanuel. You see, this is 30 cantons. This is the Gaza canton, and in here, you basically all the cantons are either green or blue, except for Gaza. You know, for the most part, and the green ones are basically overwhelmingly Palestinian, like 90% plus Palestinian, and the Israeli ones are like 90% plus Jewish. The only one that's sort of mixed is in yellow is Jerusalem, which is, let's say, 2/3 Jewish or 70% Jewish, 30% Palestinian. So we started to play with this idea. One of the ideas even and we got to this map, ultimately, we had took several different variations. So here we still have those blue cantons, which are, let's say, 80 or 90% Israeli. You could have like Tel Aviv, Ashdod, Haifa area, and you have green cantons like Jenin or Nablus or Yericho, Hebron, places that are, let's say, 80% or plus Palestinian, and the blue ones are 80% plus Jewish. But then you have other kinds that were, the yellows are Jewish majority cantons, but they're more like 2/3, 60-40, 70-30, depending on them. So they're Jewish majority cantons, but they're more integrated. And the reds are the reverse. The reds are mixed cantons, like the area where the Bedouin live, east of Beersheba. And so this has a Palestinian majority or a Bedouin Arab majority, but there's still a whole lot of Jews in there. You know, there's several 100,000 people. The majority of them are Palestinian, but there's still a good amount. So this is a Palestinian majority, but a mixed canton. And so we wanted to have an equal number of blue cantons to green cantons, so equal number of cantons that were 80% plus majority for each side, and an equal number of mixed cantons that were more like 2/3 the majority of the respective side. And then each canton, we would give them 4 senators in the upper house, and then so you'd have roughly an even number of senators representing. And there could be a little fluctuation, but in the Constitution, we would say that in order to overrule anything in the Constitution, you need, you know, a 4/5 majority or 3/4 majority. So you need the vast number of Jews and the vast number of Palestinians to agree to actually alter the Constitution. So that would more or less hold. That's the idea. I did another variation that's a little more like somewhere in between the Federation movement and our sort of, I guess, the preferred embodiment, you could say, of this proposal, which has just 2, you know, Jewish majority mixed cantons and 2 Jewish Palestinian majority mixed cantons, and they're a little. You see, it's like as you get more and more separated, they start to look a little more Swiss cheesy. You know, as the Palestinians would say, like, I don't want a version that looks like Swiss cheese. So when we like this very much looks like states in America, big round regions, and the reality is they get more mixed. And we also wanted we cut the number down. This is a total of 16 cantons as opposed to 30. So each canton is a little more powerful and has a little more control over the area of the people there. And just to give you a little idea, here's like another version of that map. This is the same map, and I can show you what we started working on sub-districts, that you call counties in the U.S., which are like divisions within a canton, and each one of those could get a certain number of representatives in the canton parliament. And so just to see what Jerusalem sort of looks like and why it's like a mixed canton. So the blue areas are Jewish majority, or virtually. I mean, I knew this map because this is where I live, so I could go street by street and know where the Jews are and where the Palestinians are. And so I have 8 Jewish districts that are 99% Jewish, and 4 green districts which are 99% Palestinian Arab. And so that creates sort of a 2/3, 1/3 balance. I also put the old city as like a separate district, and as sort of a mixed district, because you didn't really want to separate the old city and Nabi Samuel and Rachel's tomb, and sort of holy sites in the areas right around them could sort of be their own kind of canton. I also put 2 other areas here that were basically uninhabited, and so these would be opportunities to sort of build a new sort of mixed area, and this would be like district to build like a new 50-50 town sort of off the Dead Sea. And we put a similar one in the west where there's now a place called Neve Shalom, which is basically like that idea, where you have like a village that was basically set up as half Jewish and half Palestinian. And in this there's a couple of small towns also. And in this also there were several what used to be Palestinian towns prior to 1948. could maybe, if I zoom in Google Earth mode, you can see this is next to Kfar Menachem. There's a little one over there, like the town of Indib. And then over here, this is like, I mean, it's like a ghost town. These all have names on them, and this entire area used to be a Palestinian village, clearly. There's streets and there's houses, and there's no name there. So you could like rebuild some of these towns, and there's plenty of Jewish towns, and this would be like a new mixed area, sort of like the center of the reconciliation kind of region, you know. And all of this would be within Jerusalem Canton, you know. So they would all vote for the same cantonal parliament, and people could move around to different regions. But there's an issue of you know, critical mass. Like if you have 1 million people in one district, they're not likely to switch with another district. That people just don't move around that much. I've been here 14 years, and I haven't left this one district the entire time, where I'm in West Jerusalem. And then I could just show you like quickly the reverse. Like let's see, look at Ramallah, and Ramallah is kind of the reverse of this, where most of the places are green, most of the areas are Palestinian. There's like maybe 5 Jewish majority regions within like 9 Palestinian majority, and there's 2 blank areas where we could sort of build, you know, start building new mixed areas. It's hard to take a city that currently exists and start integrating it. That doesn't tend to happen here. But if you wanted to make like a new mixed city, you'd have to sort of start from scratch and sort of, you know, sell it as this is going to be the new town, and we're going to try to recruit half Jews and half Palestinians to build this sort of new future. And these could exist as sort of isolated areas that are sort of symbolic of the federation. And then I could just what for example, this is what, you know, a blue canton looks like. It's basically like Tel Aviv. Basically everything's blue. There's Ramallah, Lud, and Tel Aviv and Yafo, which has like a small Palestinian population, but it's basically like the vast majority Jewish, and there's like one little Palestinian area, and Jenin is sort of the reverse of that. And Jenin is like massively Palestinian and a couple of Jews in this little area. So that would be the ideas. You would have these cantons that would, you know, have these populations. We made a rule that we would break citizenship up by what's called like Ezrach Vatik, like a citizen who had been here for 5 years, like a veteran citizen, as you'd say in English. And a Ezrach Vatik could move to anywhere they want, you know, and they would be able to go and do what they want. And you would differentiate that from like what we call an Ola Chadash. So a new immigrant would have to register not only with the federation, but also with a canton, just like, which was a similar plan to how they do in Canada. That's like that. We got that from the Canadian, you know, constitution. And basically when you move to Canada, you want to move to Quebec, you have to register with Quebec, and they have all their point system, what gets to be a resident of Quebec, in addition to immigrating to Canada. So we would say like the blue cantons, the Jewish majority cantons, would get to, you know, limit the number of new immigrants who would come to a blue area, to an Israeli majority area. So let's say, you know, 3/4 of the new immigrants that come there had to be Israeli, or 4/5. However, you know, we could discuss that, you know, the exact numbers. And the reverse for the Palestinians. So like the Palestinians, they could bring more of their own people to their cantons, but you have some flexibility, and some number would be able to go to the other side, because you don't want it to be, you know, too exclusive, but you want to have some of the ability of a canton to preserve its sort of, you know, demographic nature and its sort of way of life within the boundaries and without being, you know, too discriminatory. So we thought that seemed like a fair proposal, and was based on other countries sort of work the same way. So we sort of incorporated that. And then in terms of immigration, like I mentioned before, we wanted to have a similar number of Jews and a similar number of Palestinians each year that would make Aliyah. And then you would not lose the real 50-50 balance. It's not going to be like, you know, 7 million people show up, and that's also unrealistic. There's not houses for 7 million people here. You know, you'd have to, like when the former Soviet Union fell, over the course of, let's say, 10 years, we had about 800,000 people, maybe 80,000 a year came in, and you over time integrated them. And so we would do it similar, like a similar vision to that. So that's more or less in a nutshell. I'm sure there's lots of details, but I'll let Emanuel pick up where I left off.
Okay. All right. Well, you know, if you look at it, there's a lot of similarities between the two solutions. The big difference being, of course, the fact that Rafi's approach is based on parity, and is much more even-handed than our approach. which as some of the I used the opportunity to look at some of the comments. People are obviously not happy with the idea of the fact that Gaza is not part of the federation. Okay, in our proposal, but it's very simple. The way politics are nowadays, if Gaza would be part of the federation, it wouldn't come into being. Okay, so there's no way at this time that the body politics in Israel would agree on a situation where there would be demographic parity between Palestinians and Israelis and Jews in the land of Israel. Inside the political arrangement. So what we have to do the second best. Okay, the second best is a citizen state with equal rights for everybody, and Gaza as a separate unit, which I have discussed with people from Gaza and with Palestinians. If the alternative is to continue the present arrangement with the occupation running and continuously going more towards some kind of apartheid regime, and leaving Gaza outside the federation, people will definitely prefer leaving Gaza outside the federation and having a citizen state at this time. And Gaza as an independent Palestinian state could develop very nicely if the blockade would be stopped and there would be border arrangements and they would get all the support they need. So I think most Palestinians would be happy if the humanitarian aspects of Gaza would be resolved. The political aspects are secondary, and over time, Gaza can become a part of join in as a confederation or as some kind of separate canton. That's a technicality. But for starters, we have to start out with something which is real, and realistically, a Jewish majority Israeli Federation would still be called for. So yeah.
So it actually seems like you are both very aligned. It seems like both of you are taking what seems to be, each of you have a more pragmatic approach, but just for a different population. So Emanuel, you're saying that a 2/3, 1/3 split would be easy for Israelis to agree to. It would be much easier.
It wouldn't be easy, but it would be possible. Okay.
Would be possible.
Yeah.
Fair.
All right. Okay. It wouldn't be easy in any case, but
right. I agree. It would be challenging regardless. Possible. Fair enough. And what Rafi's saying is Palestinians won't agree to it if it's not 50-50. So this is a way to get Palestinians to agree. So it seems like you both created plans, just different populations are more likely to agree to each one. The question is there maybe some utility? Maybe this is part of the process. Maybe it's important for activists to convince Israelis that a federation is in their best interest, right? We need to change the paradigm. If we can agree that two-state solution, it won't work, and a one-state solution won't work, then we need to change the current paradigm to get federation in people's minds. So maybe, Emanuel, your plan would be more convincing to Israelis, and it's important for activists to push that plan, and a 50-50 solution needs to be pushed to Palestinians to kind of, so our collective consciousness, we recognize federation as viable, and then it really just comes down to, figuring out that last bit. Could you see this as as possible to take both these approaches and use them to convince different demographics, and then once enough are on board, kind of find a way to meet in the middle?
I think anything which is pushing federation, if be it Rafi's proposal or be it mine, our proposal, is working towards the same end result. Okay, and I think the problematic population in for both aspects is the Jewish population. Yeah. Even our federation, which is slanted pro-Jewish, will find it difficult at this time to get sufficient support in Israel. We've done some polls, and first of all, there's about 1/3 of the population knows about it. Most of the support is among the Arab population and among the center left. The right wing is not in with it. Actually, the leadership in the right wing is more supportive than the right wing population. Leadership on the left is against it, dead against it. The population of the left wing supporters in general are more in favor of it. So we have a lot of work to do among the Jewish population, which means that we need to collect money, and we need to get support for this among the diaspora Jews, in particular in the United States, where the big problem is the progressives and the left wing, who have not abandoned their dogmatic attitude towards the two-state solution. The recent article by Peter Beinart in Jewish Currents was a breakthrough. You know, he is a progressive, and he was a full supporter of the two-state solution, and he came around and he said it's over with the two-state solution. We have to look at some equitable one-state arrangement, and basically he opened the door, and we're trying to work on that, but it's still very difficult to get articles published in progressive publications in the States. So we're trying to do it, talking to synagogues and communities. It's work in progress. But like I said, both of our approaches work towards the same target. I think Rafi's is further ahead, but anybody who's talking about federation will help.
Sure.
Fair. Rafi, do you think that your plan would be challenging to convince Israelis of?
So we did some polling recently. We just wrote this plan, let's say like 2 weeks ago or so, and we started shopping it around. Amongst Palestinians, the response has been enormously positive. We've gotten above 90%, even in Gaza, even all over the West Bank. It seems like once we didn't just cold call people. We gave them the Constitution. We explained it to them a little bit. We showed them the map, and they were overwhelmingly in support of it. And there's things in there that say, like, literally recognizing Jewish people as native to the entire land, recognizing the Jewish right to develop their culture and their language here, and all this stuff that is, like, I feel like it was almost groundbreaking to see that you got such big support on the Palestinian side. The Israeli side, initially, we had gotten above 50%, and we even earlier polls when we were getting about 68%. As we started to get into more crazy demographics, the numbers slid down a bit, but they're still above 50%. When you talk to the people, obviously convincing politicians is a bigger challenge. But in Israel, I mean, we change governments as a national pastime. We've had 4 elections in the last 2 years. So if this becomes popular enough, you could just have a new party that says, I want to do a federation. You don't need to convince the leaders who have been, convincing themselves that this is their mantra. Bibi's like, I have to do it. Israel needs to defend itself by itself, for itself forever, right? So what I think is the selling point to the federation that's parity, which why I think it's a little bit better than to sell the 2/3, 1/3, is because you really have a partner on the other side. The other side will go for it 100%, and it's not a unilateral action. This could happen completely democratically. You don't have to wait for the PA doesn't need to fall. The vast majority of Palestinians would vote yes, and it also is a permanent solution. It ends the conflict forever, and you don't need walls. There's no checkpoints. No people walking around with guns. There's no more BDS. You could be integrated into the region. We would have a normal country, and it could happen very quickly, and that's the selling point. And it's not. Whereas if you're trying to say we need to do a sort of a unilateral action that the Palestinians may not be so happy with, the international community may not be so supportive of, that's a tougher sell, because there's also risks in that. So that's why I think so almost paradoxically, it's more safe to go with parity, even though it definitely challenges what Zionism means. I sort of break down Zionism into like 2 main fields. There's cultural Zionism, like Eliezer Ben Yehuda, and Achad Ha'am, and the idea of redeveloping Hebrew, redeveloping authentic Hebrew culture in the land of our ancestors, and access to our historic sites. And then there's Zionism as a system of self-defense. That's the other aspect of Zionism. And ultimately, Ben-Gurion's vision for what that meant was we would have a state that was 75, 80% Jewish, and we would be able to defend ourselves by ourselves forever. That's the idea. I think Israelis are starting to realize as we're becoming more integrated, we're making peace treaty after peace treaty with Arabs, it's actually in our interest to make allies. You know, you don't always need to defend yourself by yourself, you know, defend yourself by yourself forever. So what the thing that changes in parity is the aspect of Zionism that is Zionism as a movement for self-defense of the Jewish people is done through an alliance between us and our Palestinian cousins. There's a saying, you know, me and my brother against my cousin, me and my cousin against the world. So if the Palestinians are willing to go, me and my cousin against the world, we're, you know, I'll watch your back, you watch my back, then we can live here and have every advantage you'd want to have as a Jewish state. It just is in the structure of parity. And it's accepting the reality that we're half the population that lives in the land of Israel-Palestine. You know, but once you get over that, once you swallow that pill, you know, the conflict will be over. And that's the challenge, convincing Israelis that to give up the idea of control and to trust somebody else. And we've had a long history where it's hard to trust other people, and that's part of the challenge. But I think if we go the route of parity, there is someone on the other side to be there worth trusting.
First of all, I think that the poll regarding the Jewish population, 50% supportive, they didn't understand what you were selling. Okay, they didn't understand what you were selling because you will not find support for parity among the Jewish population. You won't. I mean, you'll find it as in a distant dream, but not as an actual solution. And I commend you for going that way, because that's, you know, that would resolve the issues. But the facts are that Jews are not going to agree to be again in a situation where they are not the majority. Okay, the fallback will be to give equal citizenship status, and that's what we're proposing. And there may be a difference between our approaches in the fact that in our federation, the state is a civil state, and the nationality of everybody would be, the citizenship would be Israeli. Okay, the Palestinians would be Israeli citizens, and they would have Israeli nationality and Israeli citizenship. They would keep their nationality as Palestinians in the Palestinian cantons, of course, but there would be no special status attached to the Palestinian nationality or to the Jewish nationality. Okay, where it would be, they would all be Israelis. It would be an Israeli nation and an Israeli nationality and citizenship.
But, so why do the Jews get the right of return and not Palestinians?
No, in any of the federation approaches, there has to be a different arrangements for immigration. And also in our proposal, or at least the way I present it, I say, first of all, there has to be a normal immigration policy. Okay, a normal immigration policy means that anybody the state is interested in having should be able to immigrate. And the people who have first choice would be people who have roots here, either Palestinian or Jewish. Okay, and they would be allowed to immigrate based on quotas. And the quotas would be magically always big enough to make sure that everybody who wants to come would be able to come, because there really is not a problem. Okay, with the basic premise being trying to maintain a population balance the way we start out. So I think that we're also pretty similar in that we look at that we make
the immigration where it's similar,
that the immigration is related to in a positive thing, which is I think a breakthrough for you know, because I don't think, you know, anybody else addresses it in that way. So so I think we are both. I'm the realpolitik guy, okay, because our approach can conceivably even be implemented unilaterally by Israel up to a point. Okay, obviously At the end, the Palestinians will have to vote in the cantons if they want to join the federation or not. But up to that point, Israel can go for it on its own, basically, which I don't recommend. But in view of the political situation with the Palestinians, that may be the only way to go. Okay, the Palestinian leadership may not be willing to go, and I'm pretty sure that the Palestinian citizens will vote for it once they have the opportunity. As is now, I don't know whether you're aware of that, but more than 30% of the young Palestinians want to become Israeli citizens. Okay, so those are numbers which also support what Rafi said, that there's a lot of support, Palestinian support, to live in a country together with us. Okay, and there's a lot of support for a one-state solution. Again, not necessarily the same one state, but we're on the right track. We're just, and reality is coming towards us. You know, in many ways. Two states is not coming true. What Trump is proposing is basically Palestinian autonomy, which definitely will become apartheid, so that won't fly. So we're going there anyways. Just a question of how long we're going to have to suffer till we get there.
Sure.
What do you think? I mean, there is a difference in opinion in the parity or not, 50% or 2/3 versus one. I don't know how much longer it's worth staying on this difference. I think a lot of it just comes down to which population we're trying to convince. What I would suggest actually is, I don't even think this is something that common ground should be found, because I think there's a benefit to having different plans. So, so we could see what people are accepting, what people are getting on board with. It just gives us more information to make educated decisions. But there's definitely enough similar that you two and others working on federations, because it is gaining in popularity. It seems like despite our differences, we should work together to get this to be part of the conversation in Israeli and Palestinian society. How do we start to move this topic forward and get more and more people to understand and accept the federation solution?
Well, the way to do it is to get celebs to sign on for things like that, and again, that diaspora Jewry and media. The main problem right now is that the conflict is not on the agenda. It's nowhere on the agenda. Not even we're going into elections for the 4th time, okay? And it's still not going to be on the agenda. It's the most amazing thing. Okay, the critical part of our lives, which is the conflict, okay, is not on the agenda. Nobody's talking about it. So as long as it's not on the agenda, it's very, very difficult to push that. Right now, there's not one single political party which has a federation on its agenda. I'm involved now in some kind of startup which is going to evolve into a party, but not right now, not for these elections, at some later stage, and which will consider a federation. Also not pushing it as the main thing, but it will be an option. So we're just it's just going to be working hard, trying to do our best in the social media, try to write articles, try to get people interested, and the more the merrier.
I do have a follow-up, but I want to give Rafi the opportunity as well.
Sure. So I think that the way is at this point is through the people, because neither of our leaders are on the other side is really going to push this change unless they feel that a large portion of people want it. So our idea was to sort of create like a site where you could register and you could have verifiable online polls. You would give them sort of information about plans, and then they could vote to support it. And we could then show that to, eventually to our leaders, but also to other people. Like, Israelis could see that, the majority of Palestinians who live right next to them, that they've been afraid for their whole lives, would actually want to live in one country as equals with them. And that's, I feel like that's sort of a factor which will then encourage them to feel less afraid of their neighbors. And it comes mutual. Like the Palestinians, they'll say, "This sounds amazing. I just don't believe they'll ever do it."
Yeah, and that's that we have that. Where both sides say the other side, they'll never agree to it.
No, exactly. So we need to show them that that's not true. We need to
But
show them, listen, all the people who live next to you, they all agreed to it. So how do you feel now?
What's interesting is both sides have a set of assumptions. Again, I'm generalizing, not everybody, but a large portion of both sides have very bad assumptions of the other side, and those same
Absolutely.
assumptions are shared by the other side
Completely.
as well. So it's a commonality between the extremes of both societies that they think the worst of one another.
What maybe help us is the relations which have been established now with the Arab countries in the Persian Gulf and Morocco reestablished, because I think there would be a lot of support for a federation arrangement, because there's an underlying aspect of the federation which is often overlooked. If we federate together with the Palestinians, we actually become part of the Middle East. We stop being a European colony or vestige or whatever, which is what we're being accused of. But rightly or wrongly, it doesn't make a difference. But basically, it's a way of integrating into the Middle East. And I think there would be a lot of support from UAE, from Bahrain, and maybe Morocco too, and maybe maybe Jordan also, in the end. Because it would show that the Palestinians are worth something. Okay, nobody gives a damn about the Palestinians today, except for the population in the Arab countries. Really, nobody does. And if we would integrate them into our country, that would be a big step on integrating Israel into the Middle East.
100%.
Have either of you thought of potentially also approaching this from a secular religious perspective? Because it seems like the federation solution can ease tensions between Israel's Haredi community and the secular community, because currently they're fighting over all sorts of laws that would affect everybody. But if you tell them that they would be autonomous in their own areas, you could have buses on Shabbat in Tel Aviv. And maybe certain areas you'll have everything closed on Shabbat if that's what they wish. Have you thought of that approach to help get more Israeli support?
Or first of all, there's a movement called the Abrahamic Federation, which is
Yoel Oz, right?
Yoel Oz, yeah.
I interviewed him on this channel, so if anyone's interested, you could just check it out. It's Standing Up with Yoel Oz. Yeah, continue, Emanuel.
So he's working on that. And that's I've talked to Haredi people about our approach. They have really no problem with that. No problem basically with regard to the autonomy in the areas. We have no intention of splitting up into areas to have autonomous Haredi areas. Okay, there won't be a Haredi canton. I mean, there's secular people who say let's have a Haredi canton, and so they can have their own stuff and they don't disturb us. That's not going to happen, and it shouldn't happen. But I think we have to make sure that they will have representation and they will have their rights protected. But the state should be a secular state, and I think what will help to do it, if we use it as a solution with the Palestinians, it'll become more obvious that it has to be a secular state, because we cannot give advantage to one or the other religion. So in order to take out that issue, we take it out altogether, and that's a new challenge, and that's a challenge of writing a constitution. But we were supposed to do that in 1948. We haven't done it, and it's coming to haunt us. It's not only in respect to religious issues, also in respect to the way the state is being run. The lack of a constitution is very, very bad for us. So there's a lot of things ahead of us. Rafi, go ahead.
Oh, sure. I mean, yeah, Emanuel's correct about there's nowhere on the map where you could really make an entire canton that's all Haredi. But I mean, like I mentioned with the idea of there's things in the US, you call them counties, you have sub-districts, and you could give some level of, autonomy to, sub-districts of a canton. So I mean, I in the Jerusalem canton, I divided basically, like if you go down Yafo Street, north of Yafo Street is all Haredi, south of Yafo Street, like where I live, is sort of modern Orthodox and secular and Masorti. and sort of the other kind of people. And so you could have some level of autonomy in their areas within the framework of a canton constitution. So, and that's right now we wrote the sort of the federal constitution, and we definitely, you know, freedom of religion and all that sort of stuff was covered. I mean, definitely respect for sacred sites, and we'd have a committee to manage them and to manage religion within the country. But you'd have, obviously, you're not gonna, you know, people have the right to practice any religion or leave any religion. There's no, you know, really, you don't have to have a certain religion to serve in a certain office of the government. It's, you know, it's definitely, I agree. I mean, I grew up in America, so I definitely know what that's like. But we're now working on the canton constitutions, and when you get to the sort of the nitty gritty, and then you can have some, maybe B'nai Brak can have enough control to say no buses in B'nai Brak, and then Tel Aviv can say yes buses in Tel Aviv. Like I understand.
Right. Yep. So how does an hour pass so quickly? It's crazy. It's crazy. I guess, as they say, time flies when you're having fun. Mm-hmm. We're going to start wrapping it up. The conversation does not end here. We are going to move the conversation to Discord. Can one of our awesome community members please drop the Discord link in the chat? The Discord, I don't want to get too much into it, but we have an awesome community there where we have discussions about Israel-Palestine amongst other issues, and there's a feature there to have voice and video conversations like we're doing right now. There's at least one voice and video conversation every day. So if you're watching this and you want to be more involved in interacting with Israelis and Palestinians, this Discord is definitely the place to do it. So a link will be dropped momentarily. Also, we're going to do a few questions live, and then we're going to take the rest of the questions to the Discord. So if anyone has a question, we'll try to get to 2 to 3 questions right now. The rest will be in Discord. If you're new to this channel, please subscribe. We do awesome content every week. Obviously, I'm biased, so I'm going to say it's awesome, but I do think it's awesome. We're just trying to connect between people from opposing sides and make the world a better place. That's really what we're trying to do. If you haven't expressed yourself on this video, give us an upvote or a downvote, whatever you feel is right. We support that. I saw a bunch of questions. It's just kind of hard to.
What do the Palestinians
say?
say?
So I actually want to bring this up. This is a question for me. I have seen this brought up. You should have invited a Palestinian to. Don't you think it is unfair? So thanks, Nalia. It's a legitimate question. We do our best to have a fair representation of people on this show. The Great Debate is generally just me and 2 other people. So you're not always going to have a you won't have every demographic if it's just 2 people. But every week we switch it up so we're hearing from as many voices as possible. In addition to that, just to have more diversity of opinions, we have every other week now a roundtable session where it's 5 Israelis and 5 Palestinians on a live session together. So that way we get much more diversity of opinion. But just to add, the plan that Rafi proposed, and Emanuel, maybe some Palestinians were involved in your process as well, but the plan Rafi just proposed has been put together with Rafi and another Palestinian. So it's not that there's no Palestinian opinion involved in what we're expressing here. In addition to that, we have way more Israelis that are willing to come on the show for security or normalization purposes. It's much harder to find Palestinians. So it will be more common to see 2 Israelis on the show than 2 Palestinians. Hopefully in the future we can change that when there's just way more Palestinians that are willing to come on and speak. Let's see. Oh, yeah, somebody's asking, where's the Discord chat? I am very disappointed that you did not put the link. I will put the link myself here. Also, I did see some people showing support for 2-state solution. I do need to be honest. We have not had enough representation of 2-state solution on here, and that is not intentional. We would like to have more people making the case for 2 states. The Great Debate itself is a agnostic platform where we're open to all opinions. So if anybody's watching this and wants to come on and make the case for 2 states, we're cool with that.
I want to say something about 2 states. Sure, yeah. Okay, the 2 states is the reason that we think that 2 states are gone is for political reasons. Okay, it may be feasible to move 140,000 Jews out of the West Bank. It may be feasible. I'm not saying it's not feasible logistically, but politically it's not feasible anymore, and it will not be in the foreseeable future. So, you know, whoever thinks a two-state solution is a good solution, which I think it isn't for many reasons which I won't go into now, it will not be attainable. So the question is what we do to keep, you know, it's one of those things where you put it up on the, it's like wanting to start with a diet, you know. You're not going to do it in the end. It's not going to be. It just won't be. And it's sad, but you know, the date has passed. So we have to think of alternatives, and that's the issue. Okay, it's not because we won't move them. It's just a political decision to move them will not be available at any time. Sorry.
Thank you, Emanuel. So, Emanuel, I would be happy to actually have you on with somebody who supports two-state solutions, so you can work out those differences.
I'll be gladly.
I think that could be interesting.
I'll be glad to join.
Great. Let's see. Why can't I'm not sure if these questions are for the guests or in here. Okay, we will save the rest for the after party. I want to give you both an opportunity for some final thoughts for the audience. By the way, if you want to get in touch with either of our guests, their contact information is in the description of this video. They're happy to be in touch. Feel free to reach out to them. So yeah, final thoughts, what people can do to help, how they could contribute, whatever else you wanna mention.
Rafi, you go ahead.
Sure. If anybody's interested in our plan, you can reach out to me. We're in the middle of putting together a website to sort of present it, and a website that you can vote whether or not you're in favor or not. And anybody who's interested in helping us, we want to do a lot of research, you know, into the economic, the demographic, and all the other factors. Write a plan for how the military would do a transition into a federation. And some of this we could, you know, collaborate with Emanuel also. It's a lot of the same issues that you need to touch on. Sure. So if anybody wants to help, reach out to me, and we could always use it.
Okay. Well, same here. You know, whoever wants to help, first of all, spread the word. That's the most important thing. Spread the word. Talk about the fact that there are alternatives out there to the two-state solution, and there are sane alternatives, safe alternatives, and alternatives who a large part of the population already are supportive of, except the politicians aren't interested at this time. So keep that in mind. And we have a website, the Federation Movement, and you know, you can support us even financially, but also in any other way, and we'll work together to make this solution fly this way or that way. Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Thank you both so much. For those joining the after party, once you go to Discord, you will see a tab on the left side. It says after party. The second you connect, you will be connected with your voice. It's up to you. You don't have to speak. You don't have to turn your video on, but that's how you connect to hear the after party. Just to not confuse you, you will see there's another conversation going on in the lounge right now. That is a separate conversation. You're free to join that as well. But Emanuel and Rafi will be joining the after party. So meet us there. With love from Tel Aviv, Israel. Happy Hanukkah to our Jewish viewers. Hanukkah Sameach, Haverim. With love. Until next time, friend.
Bye.